Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Avery, but I go by Soavecito, and I'm a horror content creator. Today, we are going to do a episode 20 of Whispers of Horror with our guest Walter, who has the game Dark and Deep, and I'm very excited to talk more about this. How you doing today, Walter?
Great, how are you?
I'm doing good. Welcome to Whispers. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this, and yeah, it's
Sure.
gonna be a fun episode.
Yeah,
Let me just make sure. All right. We're just gonna get started, and I'm gonna just ask you a bunch of questions. I'm just trying to fix my camera because it's acting weird. Um, can you just give a little insight of who you are and what you do?
yeah. So I'm Walter Woods. I'm a solo dev. I've been working in games for about 10 years now. Um, my background is actually in architecture. Um, I have I studied architecture and practiced architecture for quite a while, and moved to games because I got really hooked on the world building aspect. So it's like, oh, you know what? Let's throw off of our physical world limitations and get into games. So I got into games through architecture, which is a kind of unique path, but it's been really fun and it means that kind of an interesting perspective. So I am a professor. I teach game development, and I am a developer, solo dev. I had a studio where I worked in a smaller team, like 5 people, my last game, and now I'm working on a solo project called Dark and
Nice.
Deep, and it's really fun to work on. Just sort of get complete creative control, and I get to work and do things that you would have a really hard time convincing other people to be part of.
Nice, nice. How long you been doing architecture for? And what got you into architecture?
So I studied. My dad is an architect, and
Okay.
so I just sort of ran in the family and studied architecture in college because I love the idea of spaces and geometry that mean something to
Okay.
people. Um, and um, I I guess it's interesting. Anybody who's ever been interested in architecture might know that the study of architecture is beautiful, all-encompassing art. It's amazing. In many ways it's like the mother of design disciplines. The practice of architecture is very lacking sometimes
Okay.
because there's so much more involved in this process. You're dealing with so many practical realities. You're dealing with all of the classic problem of all the people with the most money have the worst taste. You're dealing with all the you're dealing with all the realities of the world, and so I thought naively I could jump to video games and I wouldn't have to deal with any of those kind of problems. That's obviously not true.
Mm-hmm.
but 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 I actually really, I found that I was a better fit for game development because I have it's a smaller world, and therefore what I do really means something and has a lot of effect on people, and they experience it personally, and I get control over it personally. So it's been really, it's been empowering to work in games. With architecture, like, my forte when I was developing was towers, and I worked on those man-made islands in
Okay.
Dubai.
Nice, nice.
And I don't I have to check every year to see if something I designed got built. This was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, the timelines are wild too.
Funny fact, and it's just a coincidence, but when I first started school, I went to community college first, just to get my credits, and I wanted to transfer over because I actually wanted to be in architecture. Funny
Yeah.
enough, kind of started wanted to start doing civil. I would like my pivot was civil engineering. Then I was like, oh, maybe I'll go and take architecture. But at that point, I still was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Then realized that it just wasn't for me. But I respect that you did it. Like I think that it's awesome, and I think it's just more people should get into it. But again, just wasn't my forte. Realized that I like working with like students with disabilities and just like teaching them and all that stuff. So going from
It
architecture
is,
to doing what I do now
yeah,
is just definitely 180. But sometimes you're just the path you're on. Just certain things in your life changes it, and for the good or the worse. So I'm just
yeah,
fortunate that I do what I do. So, um,
great.
how long have you been working on game development? And what
About
made
10
you?
years.
Sorry, my bad. I
Yeah.
was gonna say, and
What made me
what made
switch?
you
Yeah.
do horror games?
So, the I've been working in game development the last 10 years, and
Okay.
I started by what happened is I met a guy. I was working in Boston, and I met a guy named Russ who sometimes you meet somebody that's so smart that you're terrified that they will go work with somebody else, and that other person will like benefit from how smart they are, and you have to like lock them down and trap them and learn from them. That
Mm-hmm.
was what happened with me and Russ, and we had a great little partnership where he was a software engineer and I was an architect. And so I learned how to code and how to do some of the development side of stuff from him. And he learned more about design and communication from me. And so we had a studio together and we did contract like VR experiences for trade shows. We did a lot of dev for hire stuff.
Okay.
And then we made a game together. And then we split the studio because we were just like, it had all run its course nicely. And we were ready to move on to different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked on some smaller projects in between there. And when I got into horror was um, I wrote a short story that became Dark and Deep about this guy, Samuel Judge. And I was writing this story and it just had the themes of, just it was a dark story, right? And I was sort of like, I've always thought that horror is a place as a genre
Mm-hmm.
where you can talk about it has space for the widest breadth of emotions. So like some of the funniest stuff is in horror, and some of the most horrifying things, and some of the most dramatic and heartfelt and even hopeful things can be in within horror. And so my story that I wrote was that way. It was like kind of comedic, dramatic, and ultimately even hopeful,
Mm-hmm.
and which is something that I see in a lot of great horror. And so to me, it got connected with Gustave Doré because I've always been a fan of his art, and the themes that I was telling were sort of similar to a lot of the things he's illustrated, like the Divine Comedy or biblical themes
Okay.
or Paradise Lost, that kind of stuff. And so, those themes really aligned with horror. And so I just felt like I don't really see horror as I think it's the most flexible genre, honestly,
You
because
know,
it's like, yeah,
I was gonna say, weirdly enough, I agree with you.
yeah,
Like how you said, like comedy and horror, like weirdly enough, work together. Like it shouldn't. Like when
yeah,
you're making jokes or you're laughing, and it's when I think of laughter and comedy, it's more like upbringing, like light, funny. But then you got obviously horror where it's just compared to like dark, scary, your heart is beating, and how that combination works together in some great movies and some great games. Like Shaun of the Dead is one of my favorite movies of all time, just because,
mm,
like, yes, it's a horror movie, but no offense, that shit was so funny. Like, it's just different.
yeah,
I guess it's just like it's like a yin and a yang, like two opposites that shouldn't work together. So like, but you're right. Like it's the most flexible genre
yeah.
that you can do multiple things. Like you can do action, you can do comedy, you can do all these different types. So like,
It's also create from a creative perspective, it's a very accessible genre.
yeah.
Like, and horror has always been this way. Like, if you look at like indie horror movies,
Mm.
like so many young director slash photographer slash, whatever type creatives, writers cut their teeth on making like fun kind of horror stuff.
Hmm.
Like indie horror has been a thing before indie anything was really a thing.
I agree.
And then indie horror movies, and then same thing with indie games. Like it's the most accessible to amateurs, which I don't consider myself an amateur, but what I love about the sort of like the space is that they're open for something new all the time.
Mm.
Whereas you really got to prove why you're doing something different in a lot of other genres.
I
My
agree.
last game was essentially like a tycoon kind of game.
Hmm.
Oof, you got to prove to them why your game is the way it is.
No, I
As a
totally get that.
because they have requirements. They expect things to be a certain way, because that's a well established genre with less innovation. Whereas horror is like, whew, it could be anything. It
Like,
could be
yeah,
weird
basically anything.
mechanics.
Hmm.
Yeah, weird mechanics, weird visual styles, weird stories, weird anything. Within the genre, and like it can go. There's obviously like pockets that get like popular, um, especially with visual styles. Certain types of visual styles that get popular, but it's much more varied than a
Yeah,
lot of others.
yeah, I totally agree. I definitely think like horror is definitely like a gateway to so many other things, and people should start with horror just because like you can make anything scary these days. Like people are starting making children books like Winnie the Pooh like into a horror movie, and it's just like
That is
things.
interesting. I've definitely I have like there's something about that bothers me though. I don't like when they do like horror Christmas movies or horror
Okay,
Thanksgiving. Like it's
sometimes they
literally
work, sometimes they don't.
whatever people like, but that bothers me. I'm just like, you know what? Let me have Christmas and not be like Santa is stabbing everyone now.
That brings up just another question. Is there any hard no's other than like holidays that you say that shouldn't be touched?
No, I mean, my opinion doesn't matter, but
Oh, no, 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 no,
uh,
no. Your opinion does
yeah,
matter. So,
for me, it's more like, well, I have opinions about like what kind of horror I think is compelling.
okay.
And I just, I don't really relate to or connect with like any of the torture stuff. I don't really
Okay.
understand why you'd want to watch that. Some people get something out of it, I guess. I don't really even really connect too much to slasher style horror things. Um, I think that the sort of like there's a balance though, because when you hear somebody say that, usually what they're saying is like, "Oh no, I like psychological horror," and they're like, "Oh, I really want it to be emotional," and like the real danger is like your sadness. You're probably depressed or something, and it's like, well, I think that can be a valid, interesting story, but I
Hmm.
do also like when things are happening in the story as opposed to it all just happening in somebody's head or things like that.
Hmm.
So there's kind of a there's like I think there's a lot of people that are getting a little bit irritated with the idea of like, oh yeah, you were the bad guy all along, or ooh, maybe
This is not
you
Scooby
know,
Doo. I get
the
it.
enemy is your trauma.
Yeah, no,
But
I get it.
I think I like, but I like the fact that like what you're connecting to with those kind of stories is the emotional core of a character.
Okay.
But we can still tell real stories of interesting things happening. It doesn't just have to be one time I accidentally drowned a baby in a bathtub and now that's the
Jesus.
game. Like
All right,
that's what
that's a hard
a
that's
lot.
a hard thing to deal with. No, like, damn.
There's a
Okay.
lot of there's a lot of that, right, in the
Yeah, I
horror
get that.
genre. Like, oh, and he was a bad guy.
No, I told Jesus.
Yeah,
Um, like
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, that caught me off guard. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but that'll be horror
Well,
for you. No, I
I'm
agree.
a
I
I'm a
totally agree
horror
with that.
dev. I'm a
Yeah.
horror dev.
Um, is there what? So let me ask you. So what is your favorite horror movie, and like, what's your favorite horror game? If you had to pick something.
Um, for in recent years, the my favorite sort of horror thing lately has probably been for movies. Maybe The Lighthouse
Okay.
would be in the top right now. But probably the my favorite horror thing in the last many years has been Midnight Mass.
That's the TV show, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I highly enjoyed that
sick.
too. I like the
I love
series.
Flanagan. I love Flanagan.
Okay.
A lot of his things are really good. Oculus is a great movie too. I think he's done a lot of really great. That's a
Okay.
sick movie.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, that movie's
I enjoy.
cool.
I did enjoy Oculus. It was like wasn't my
That
favorite
scene
movie,
where
but it definitely
some
had
flaws.
as yeah, like it was
Yeah,
definitely different.
there was a scene where that woman she thought she was eating an apple, but it was a
And it
light
was
bulb, and I
oh
was like,
yeah,
I
that
can't
was
even look.
yo. I'm not gonna lie, that did make me feel uncomfortable, and I
Yeah,
like
that was
movies
very
that make me do that. Um,
yeah. But I
okay,
love Flanagan. I think Flanagan and his perspective is really cool. Um, in terms of like I also really connect with like thriller type movies
okay,
like Coen Brothers, like No Country for Old Men, that kind of
okay,
stuff.
okay.
So that really drives a lot of how I like to tell stories. I really like, and I really like Cormac McCarthy and how simple he is with how he writes. So we have that kind of stuff, and then for games, I like some of the games that people think are bullshit, which is interesting. Like
Okay,
I
hot
like
take.
Layers of Fear.
I love that game.
I like a lot of people talk trash. I'm like, this is a cool game. I understand that other games are doing what Layers of Fear was doing and they're kind of like ripping it off. Or I also understand that Layers of Fear is sort of like a little bit silly sometimes.
But
But at
Layers
the
of Fear
same
is made
time,
for specific people. Like you
yeah,
have
it's a
to really
specific kind
appreciate.
of
It's like a
game.
fine wine.
And like the concept of this whole thing rearranging around you and how well they do that in that game is super cool. They do it super well, and there's some really interesting set piece moments. I love Inside. Inside was
Okay,
my favorite game in a long time.
Inside's great. Have you tried Limbo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
both
like
those
I
games
yeah.
good. Yeah,
No,
those are
yeah, I
great.
think the like Limbo, Inside, and just like Layers of Fear. Like I'm already seeing where your mindset is when it comes to just
Yeah.
games
Then
and movies.
the other big pillar is the frictional stuff. So like Amnesia or Soma mostly. I really love Soma.
Oh, Soma. So I have a big fear of like, so I guess it's thalassophobia. I don't like open
Yeah,
water, and
yeah,
that
yeah.
game really could make me feel some. I couldn't finish it just because I'm just terrified of being underwater,
It
and
freaked
the
you out.
fact that the game is literally underwater the whole time is just
Yeah, the whole time.
panic attacks.
What
I guess
I really what I respect with frictional is I really love their design philosophy. I like how hands off they are.
okay,
It's like just the way that they deal with the character controller, like they sort of steal control occasionally and sort of like encourage you to look in certain directions, but it's
I get it.
subtle. I
What
rip
did you
that
think
off of
about
them.
Amnesia: The Bunker?
I haven't played that yet.
Okay,
It came out during extreme dev crunch, and I haven't had a moment. But I've
okay,
seen a lot about it. I don't know if I'll like that as much because I don't like super highly replayable horror.
okay.
Now
Interesting. So it's
I
one and
have
done.
heard. So I think repetition is the enemy of horror. But that being said, from what I know about that game, I think they've done a great job of creating enough connection, enough like variety to make, and I think that that's something to aspire to. But anytime you are repeating something, I think it sucks all the energy out of it.
Okay. Well,
But that's for me. I think a lot of people
interesting.
don't feel that way. The mechanics of that are really well done to the point where I think that you're feeling the meaningful like choices you're having to make, and it's really really tense.
You just
So
gave me a question to ask. So I'm actually working on. I'm in like conversations with one of the devs of Amnesia: The Bunker, but I'm gonna ask them if I'm able to do it with him.
mhm.
Like what's the fear of just replayability, and does that hurt the game? So thank you for giving me that question. I
Yeah, I
appreciate that.
think that's a great question for him because like this is a this is something that they had to deal with because the Amnesia games are originally anything they've made before is not replayable.
Yeah, it's a one and done.
Uh, yeah, and to change to that, I'm sure that there's a lot of great insights there. And I think that they are really smart horror devs. They understand what actually is scary. And so if anybody did it right, it's them. But the idea of dying and reloading a checkpoint and dying and reloading a checkpoint, that's not what's happening in that game.
Yeah.
But you know, in linear titles where that's every time you reload, it's less scary. So there's the balance. It's a hard balance to like figure out as a dev, like, okay, do I make it easy? How easy do I make it? Because if they die and they reload, it sucks some of the energy out. But
So
if I make
like
it really,
like games like Outlast where you die and you like obviously you come back, you think that takes it? No, actually, I actually kind of
some
agree with you, just because like you know what to expect. Okay, you know, okay,
you
I died.
start talking, here's how it shifts. You watch like Let's Players or whatever, they play games like that. They stop getting scared. They start talking about
Strategy.
mechanics of the game and how they can strategize. So they're becoming empowered because they're learning about those things, right? And learning and being empowered is not scary.
Okay, what about games like I don't know if you know the Mortuary Assistant.
Yeah, I really love that.
Okay, so like that game has a lot of replayability, and the reason why I think that's just a little bit different of like some of the games you're talking about is just because like every shift that you do is randomized. So like
Sure.
some of the like inventory, the materials are always in a different place. It's always a different, like I don't know. I'm talking about it. I'm getting goosebumps. There's always a different demon you have to deal with. There's always
Yeah.
it's never the same jump scare. So like when a game has something like that, like is that more
Yeah.
appealing to you because it's just so
So
randomized, or you still have the
I
same
love.
feeling?
I think Mortuary Assistant's another great one that did a great job of avoiding this problem.
Okay.
And the way that it does it, in my opinion, is that the process, like the things you're doing on a moment-to-moment basis, are all sort of like these little mini games, right?
Sure. Even
And as
though
you're going
it is
through,
repetitive, you still have to do the same thing from
it's
top to bottom.
repetitive, but that's the entire feature. That's the game. It's lulling you into a sense of like, oh, I'm just doing my job as the
Like a
mortuary
nine to
assistant.
five,
It's
or
lulling you. It's
yeah.
lulling you. Whereas like that repetition is actually enhancing the horror because you think, well, okay, I'm just gonna do the teeth now. Oh, I'm gonna do that, and at any moment something could happen, or oh, I gotta go get that. You don't know when it's gonna happen,
Hmm.
as opposed to like, yeah. So you're really like, I think there's a great sense there where it's you must carry on and move forward, uh, despite the fact and do all these repetitive tasks to fight, despite the fact that there's something brewing in the background. And so that one, like, you really aren't able to be like, there's certain mechanics that let you be really proactive about things, but you can't tease a jump scare out.
Yeah.
It's gonna like happen to you because you engaged in the mechanics. But I think anyone would admit that over time you get used to the scares in that game.
True.
That's
True.
anything. You
I think
can't make a game that's not going to do that.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
think that what the Mortuary Assistant does well is that you don't get jump scares like right away. Like they're like kind of
Yeah.
mitigated. So basically, you it's like a scale. So the longer you are
Yeah.
working on the bodies, the more that they're throwing at you because the more you're
Right.
going insane or being possessed. So like I like that aspect just because it's a scale. Like you're not, it's not like oh jump scare,
Yeah.
like every 5 seconds. It's
Yeah.
like here and
100%. Yeah.
there to
There's
make you
obviously
feel
a
like
little.
question it.
There's
So
obviously a little brain behind it. I should ask Brian this.
I'm
I should ask him.
if you're in
He's a
touch
really
with
great
Brian,
guy.
well, I tell him I want him on my show. I've been working. He said he'll contact me, but I'm gonna put
I'll
the
tell
pressure on
him. Yeah.
him. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
definitely.
We've been in contact a little bit
Okay.
over the last couple of years. And he's been really actually a big help to me, help me navigate some stuff, which has been really cool.
Yeah, he was helping another
Um,
developer I was talking to, but I'm gonna put the pressure on
yeah,
him. Tell him
Tim,
I'm looking for him.
Tim is
Tim, yeah,
great too. I
Tim.
saw you,
Yeah,
I saw you had him on. I met
yeah.
him. We all met up at PAX this year.
Nice,
We all
nice,
saw each
nice.
other.
All right,
Yeah.
well, now I gotta complete the trifecta. I need to have
Yeah,
him
there you
on.
go.
So now that I told Tim to tell him that I'm looking for him, I'm gonna tell you to
There you
tell him
go.
I'm looking for him,
Yeah,
and
tell
just
me.
tell him I know where he lives. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
Yeah.
I do appreciate just to talk, like, just to get your mindset. We're just getting to know you a little bit more and all this stuff. We're actually gonna switch over to me playing the game, and then let's do some commentary, and then I'm gonna ask you questions
Sure.
regarding that. All
Yeah.
right, let's switch over now. I do have one more quick question before we start doing this.
Yeah.
How do you balance? I love asking this question just because I want people to have a sense of like when it comes to content creating or just a person making a game. Like it's a it could be difficult balancing your real life versus your game development or just your business
Yeah.
aspect. So how do you balance your personal life versus the things that you're working on, like the games and just like like work?
So this is a really serious topic for me. I'm essentially an self-admitted workaholic.
Okay.
Um, in recovery. So I don't work the kind of hours I used to when I was in my 20s because it cost me too much. So I accomplished a lot, but it cost me too much. So at this point in my professional career, in my mid 30s, doing it for a while, I I treat it like essentially a discipline. Like I really have to, I have essentially three things that I'm doing at all times, sort of
Mm-hmm.
like that I'm keeping up with. And I'm married, I have a wife, so I have to kind of keep a lot of things in the air. And so I just have to be really good at communicating to all the people who need things from me in my life when I will be available and when I will not, and be proactive about it. So I'm not, because the difficulty when you're a part-time dev trying to ship an actual product. It's fine if you can just be, well, I'll work on that later. I'm not trying to ship this thing, but I got a release date, I got to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So the difficulty is when you have an actual deadline and you have to say no to a lot of stuff. It doesn't hurt as bad when you say no and you've set expectations for people around you as to and when this season will be over.
Mm-hmm.
Like my wife is counting down the days for when the game comes out. She's so excited.
That's good. That's good.
We still like I just refuse to not take care of my personal relationships, but I could easily take my hands off the wheel and let this whole thing take over. I just have to be really proactive about it. I ascribe to kind of a philosophy during the week of a no 0 days philosophy, meaning like everything, like every day something happens towards the project, even if it's small. And usually what happens is that snowballs. And I'm a big list maker. I don't work on the weekends unless I have a specific thing that I have to do, like this,
Mm-hmm.
or like I'm in Next Fest right now, so I've been doing a little
Nice.
bit of development today, like fixing a couple things. But overall, I don't work on the weekends because I don't think it's a good idea to sacrifice that for. But
Well, I appreciate you
um,
sacrificing for whispers.
yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's good. Yeah, I like to podcast. But you know, so I do no 0 days, and that usually means that things snowball when I'm working on something.
Mm-hmm.
And I also am just like, I'm a big list maker, and I actually follow a strategy that Quentin Tarantino turned me on to. I don't know Quentin
Oh,
Tarantino. I saw it in a YouTube video.
okay.
So, like, I know Quentin. Okay, here's what it is. So, at the end of your workday, when you're working on stuff, leave one small thing unfinished that you were just going to finish. You leave it unfinished. You know what you're supposed to do, but you leave it unfinished. It could be a
Okay.
very small detail, okay? And then uh, you make a couple of notes about things you want to do the next day. So what you do is then the next day you sit down, you do the quick thing. So you get like a quick layup, like boom, done.
Oh, like gotcha. You build motivation, or you build
You're
like
building that momentum.
the
Yeah, you
momentum.
do the
That's the
quick
word I was looking
thing.
for.
You don't sit down and go, "What's today?" So, but then you also have your list because sometimes you can't leave something unfinished. You need to ship
Mhm.
it or something like that. So my second backup, if I can't do that, if I can't go, yeah, that's cool, but let me do one little tweak tomorrow, then I will make the list then. The
Mhm.
mistake people make is making a list of things to do after they're not thinking about their project. They got to get back in the mindset. Make the list right at the end of while you're working. And then the next day when you start working, you've got this like really, it's as if you were just continuing your
Yeah,
vibe.
no, I think that's a great
Yeah.
advice because like making the list the same day is
Yeah.
I just feel like it's harder. But if you pre-plan it, you already going down like when you get to work, you already know what you have to do for that
Yeah.
day.
You know what's next. Yeah. And like that helps. But like one thing I'm not good at is stopping myself from like responding to player feedback. Like I see a player thing and I'm like, maybe I should tweak that. And I have the hardest time, especially during when the demo is out there and all these people are playing it. I have the hardest time working on finishing content that is, I need to finish and
Mm-hmm.
not just go back to what they're seeing and like getting in there. uh, that's a hard thing for me, but staying dedicated to doing the correct things that are on the plan
Mm-hmm.
is hard.
No, I totally agree. As you can tell, like I was late today just because I am married and I have a 1 year old daughter and trying to make content, and sometimes it just like yesterday I had Tim. I think it was yesterday. I see. My days are blended. I know I had Tim at one point. It
Yeah, a
probably was
couple days
yesterday.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday or a couple of days ago. Or probably no, it was Wednesday. But Wednesday and then Friday or yesterday I had somebody else on, and my daughter woke up at 9:50, like screaming on the top of her lungs. She has like four teeth coming in, and it's just like, man, just how to balance. Like, well, obviously, I prioritize my daughter. Like, if I have to cancel the show because my
Sure.
daughter's just not having a great time, I'm gonna do that. But it's just like it's hard because you're gonna have to make those sacrifices. No, like, and my wife's been supportive. Just like this is what I need to do, but I also have to know that my family takes priority. So like I have to stop what I'm doing, even though it might hurt my productivity for the day. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like my family's still gonna be with me at the for forever, but this might not. So again, just but it's a crazy balance
Yeah.
to try to figure out like what to do. But I love the idea of having a list. I usually have that, so I have like a Franklin planner that has something like that, and I'll write down all the things I'll do today. And if I can't, my previous boss told me like push it to the next day. Like you just put a thing, and he said if you keep pushing the same thing to another day, then it is not important enough for you to do it. I learned that was
Right.
a cool trick too. Like I think he said like 3 days, just because like if you can't focus sometime in the day to work on that specific thing, why are you even trying to do it if you have to push it out more than 2 or 3 days? So I think that's a smart strategy as well. Like prioritize what really truly matters because time is limited. 24 hours ain't shit. Like people say
Yeah.
it is not enough time because you're spending a lot of time eating, you're spending a lot of time, or not eating, well, eating and sleeping and working, and just like when you
Yeah.
really have time to work on the things you love, it ain't a lot. You get like maybe 4 hours if you're lucky. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's hard. It's
yeah,
hard.
100%.
Yeah, you got to be after it and like dedicated to it for sure. But yeah, I agree. It's just not worth it to sacrifice the people you love. There's an aspect of this which is like I actually can't really make great stuff when I'm not in a good place with my people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to operate properly. And, also my project itself has evolved a lot over the course of the last 3, 4 years because my life has evolved. And some of the things about it have evolved, some of the messaging, some of the concepts, just because my life is different, And so
Mm-hmm.
you have to have a life in order for that kind of stuff to happen, you know?
I totally respect that and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. It is on the YouTube and everything like that. I just can't share it to you just because
Yeah,
it'll destroy my whole system. I've tried it before, and streaming on
I
multiple
got you.
things, it doesn't work. So
I
yeah,
see
we're
it. I
gonna.
see it like lagging, but I see it from maybe a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, is it still lag? Hold on, let me just check.
No. I'm sure it's not lagging. I'm seeing it later than everyone, of course.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
Just give me 1 second. Let me just. But yeah, I'm very excited to know more and just this game. Like, how did you come up with Dark and Deep? And so, can you give us an overview of your horror game and what sets it apart from the other horror titles in the market? While I get through this.
So, Dark and Deep it's an interesting project because um, I think when you look at it, the immediate first thing that jumps out is the visual style, the black and white line work, stuff like that. That all comes from Gustave Doré, who's an 1800s illustrator. And I use his work. So, like this book here, this is the Divine Comedy. I have like illustrations from inside of that, and I actually scan these
Oh,
in.
nice.
So I scan them in. I even have this.
Dear listener, after all the watching,
This is an
all the waiting,
1880
all the
printed
dead ends,
Bible.
dead air, and death threats, finally,
So in
they
here
emerge
are
from
some
the
of the
shadows.
illustrations as well that get scanned and put in the game. And so the idea with using his art is to take a variety of things that he illustrated, and in the game that's why there's all these quotes. The quotes are all from the pieces that I'm scanning in,
Okay.
either from the Bible or from Paradise Lost or from Dante's like Divine Comedy.
1 year ago, he
And
broke the story wide open.
so the game itself is this sort
Plots
of
to
like
construct a malevolent mind control
modern
machine,
uh,
capable
retelling
of imprisoning
of
a
the
person
classic
in
sort
a
of
dark
like
terrorscape
some of the
of
classic
torture.
themes
all
of
happening
somebody
in
who's
your
being
backyard.
sort of like about redemption and loss and greed
We have the documents.
and sin.
The
And
shadowy
this is
government
like
contractors hiding in
a story told across time and every type of mythology and every type of
the trail has seen cold for
conceptual
some time,
place,
but today,
and I tell it
everything
using the art. So it's kind of like basically this idea of using art and sculpture and history across time to tell a more modern story.
changed.
So when you're like, the podcast is in
Coming
my
up
form, like view, it's like one of the
dark
most modern,
deep.
Version of
ways
it.
of,
Yeah.
it's
A
like a
killer
modern
run.
way of doing
Who is the
like,
mysterious
it's very
driver of a
possible
black
that
metal van
if
seen
Dante
racing
was
away
alive
from
today,
violent
he would have
sea?
put it all in a podcast,
Okay.
or he would have put it all in a, he might have made a crazy like horror,
Samuel
like spooky sound effects podcast out of his theories about the afterlife, right? And so,
Oh.
so basically, I'm doing like this thing with like modern storytelling mixed with ancient storytelling, and the game is all about that on a thematic level, but on a very basic like level to connect to. I have, it's just a story about a guy named Sam who he really hates his life, and he gets caught up in a really crazy story, a crazy series of events. He tries to defraud his company, and it goes poorly. So basically, it's this classic sort of like No Country for Old Men story. Like, oh, there's a briefcase full of cash, and I'm gonna keep it, and that's all it takes for your life to change, right? And so this kind of like idea of the simple person who isn't necessarily a bad guy, who just gets swept up,
Wrong place, wrong time, kind of.
wrong place, wrong time type of guy.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, like he's sort of sleepwalking through life, and it makes him vulnerable to this ridiculousness, and it all just happens to him. And so he ends up in this crazy paranormal experience where you're hearing the narrations of the podcast. There seems to be a lot of government conspiracy stuff going on. There's also this weird girl watching you You don't really know what she's doing.
Yeah, I literally just got driven off a cliff, and I was just gonna ask, like, there's a body, there's a lot of things happening. There's a body
Yeah.
wrapped in trash bags, and I'm just like, yo, what is going on? So like, I think I like the intro. Like, it definitely throws you into a loop. Like, okay, now I really have to understand what's going on. But I wanted to ask, like I really felt like you want to prioritize just storytelling. So like, what role do narrative and storytelling play in your horror game, and how do you engage players with the narrative while keeping the suspense alive?
So, the kind of like one of the things about the big breakthrough, there's two big breakthroughs in the development of this game. That one thing is I wanted a really in-world narrative device. I didn't want it to be to take you out of it, and the podcast was really good for that because
Okay.
Sam, he's a huge fan of the podcast, so he sort of listens to episodes of the podcast, and it unveils a lot of what's happening in the story. A lot of the story is also done through like little text terminals, like going through your computer and looking at the web pages you visited and your chat, and listening to the podcast that way. And there's kind of a lot of a theme in the game of him being a little bit too always online, and maybe he's needs to touch grass. And so the idea of kind of like making a lot of the storytelling happen through his computer and like this sort of sickly glow of a computer monitor the whole time is a way of kind of pushing his isolation. And then you also have the other big thing was the frames. So I don't love when a horror game doesn't have a unique selling proposition, like an actual mechanical thing. Just
Nice.
describing the world is cool, but I think people experience horror through using tools and learning how to do things a little bit. So
Well, the jump scare got me. I'm not gonna lie. I love that
Did it get
part.
you?
Yeah, the girl got me.
Yeah, she
I
just
wanted
keeps
to-
knocking you off a cliff. doesn't she?
Oh, great. That sounds. That's she's 2 for 2. But I wanted to talk about the mechanic of the frame or the mirror. Like, how does that work, and like, how did you get the idea of it? And then like, can you bring up some more mechanics that we should expect with this game?
So the frames there's like 4 different frames, and they all have different functions. They all so the one you're looking through, the first one you have there is that's the first frame, and that's used to reveal good things or useful things. So it's like sort of used for a lot of puzzle elements.
Okay.
So anything you look around pretty much with that thing, and if you can find something kind of glowy and blue, and that's for hidden items that might be helpful to you. And then all the rest of the frames are for different types of enemies, and to defend yourself against them. So a lot of the tension in the gameplay comes from switching between the frames, because you got one enemy on you, but the other enemy is somewhere, and you can't see them except through the frames. So they're after you, but you cannot fight them or see them, but they will definitely kill you even if you can't see them. So you kind of got to deal with all kinds of different enemies that only the frames can see through. And so the frames allow you to deal with them, but on a creative level, the frames also send messages to you on the back of the frame, sort of hinting at their origin, like how they were given to you, because they seem random, right? So when you get the frames, it's like a lot of the story is about why do you even have these frames. It's kind of spoken about over the course of the game, and a lot of the story and about the giver of the frames to you, and who they are. So on a kind of a simple level, though, the game from a narrative perspective is about looking at your life through a different person's eyes, different perspective. And so
Like, take a walk in their shoes. In a way.
and so and another word would be that reframing your life So it's about kind of like looking at things through somebody else's eyes and understanding what you look like to them. And so the frames are kind of a metaphorical element there, you know.
Okay.
And there's the reference to the art history, which, you know, it works. On a practical level, I think it's just a cool horror mechanic, which is like, oh my gosh, you can't see the stuff that's trying to murder you. It gives you a little like hidden object level to the game. I'll tell you what, people just freaking forget how to use them though, about halfway through, and they just get stuck. I don't know why. They're very simple to use, but people will just forget to look around with that first frame, and they just are like, I'm stuck. I'm like, have you looked through the frame?
Yeah, like you would think that would be a simple concept. But
You'd think that'd be. Some people are glued to it, like they never aren't looking through it, and
like
some
me,
people just forget about them.
I'm glued to it right now because it's like the fact you said there's enemies that I can't see.
Yeah.
Listen, this is my new glasses at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Some
I-
people get glued to it.
I wanted to say, like, I'm very fond of the environment. Can you just elaborate, like, your mindset when you were making some of the environments for the game?
Yeah, so if you look at kind of some of the stuff that's in, like, especially in Divine Comedy and Paradise Lost, some of the landscapes that are being portrayed, I really I wanted to reference those landscapes. Like, here's a good one, Purgatorio.
Oh, that's sick.
So I wanted this element, like, I mean, you can see that sort of has a feel that's similar to the game in the textures of how like the wall is. That's because I literally scan the stuff in, right? So the world itself is made of textures coming from here, but I'm making my own world. I'm not really directly creating anything from these pieces of work. But I wanted you to feel a little bit like you're inside one of Doré's illustrations, just to further kind of throw back the idea and just to somewhat non-subtly hint at the notion that you're definitely in some sort of supernatural space. It's not as non-physical as a lot of people think. When you get further into the game, there's a couple hints about where you are.
Okay.
But you know, you also are in this kind of, I guess, like some of the terms that are popular now are like, there's a lot of sort of liminal spaces.
Okay.
Where you start out in that hallway. That's called the gallery, and you actually have that hallway keeps happening with different elements in the game. And I saw you got to the part where you find the room, like that's sort of embedded in the cave.
Yeah.
Where you're going, and it's just all about that contrast, right? Of like the weird sort of ancient looking space mixed with hyper modern, like sort of computers and servers
Dear
and
listener,
rooms like that.
The weather is
and so
turning
just
cold.
all about the fish out of water,
So
the
is
drawing
this
the contrast, like the van in the cave.
Hazy details are hidden
that kind of
behind
stuff.
storm clouds.
Yeah, how
and
you
Meant
can
to
jump
just-
from one place to another just in a blink
We
of
may
an
never
eye, like
fully
blink
know
of a
what
second.
happened to Abby.
I do like that
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Lost.
Yeah, it's meant to make you feel like
Just
there's
vanished.
a to it, but it's obviously
Was she
surreal and
into
strange, and
Did she know too much?
the level design is
Perhaps
focused
she
on kind
doesn't
of going
want to be
forward, but
found.
also switching back and spiraling. There's a lot of
Perhaps Abby is living
spirals and
a life
weird
somewhere
things like
far
that. So
away.
I'm kind of,
The sun is shining. Listening.
because of my architectural background, leveraging a lot of things that I know about how humans move through spaces to try and make you feel it some type of
This
way.
broadcast right
You know.
now.
Yeah, no,
Happy to hear that.
like I said,
some
when
investigation.
I was playing, like just playing this so far, just like the
Yeah.
atmosphere,
If you're out there.
it definitely makes me just wonder, like, what's next? Like, where am I gonna jump next? Like, where am I gonna be next? And it's just it never, like, it keeps it fresh because it feels like it's never gonna be in one location. Like you said, like I was in a van one
Those of us
second, and then
who are
I'm in a
truly
cave, and now I'm in a room, and like a random room,
never rest.
listening to a podcast, and it's just like the unpredictability
No mystery is ever truly
one of my favorite things of horror, just
We
because
know that the work is.
I don't want to know what's next. I don't want to, because I feel like you brought like replayability from other games.
Something
So
tells
once
me,
you
dear
have that
listener,
expectation
that the
and you're like,
next
oh, I have an
mystery
idea,
brewing.
is the minute you start losing
Even
people.
now,
And the fact that this can be
perhaps right
unpredictable
here in the
is
slumbering
what's going to
Virginia
keep the
town,
horror aspect of it. So I
around
really
the
do
corner,
like that.
Right.
Something sinister.
I wanted to ask,
Casting its
what
shadow into
what
our
are some of the
lives,
highlights
homes,
and what are some of the lowlights of the things you experienced
never
when
far
developing this game?
wolves in the wilderness. The eye in the
Well, one thing
sky,
I learned
the
is
powers that
kind
be
of
in Washington, D.C.
I like working with a dead
They are
artist.
always
That's been
watching
fun.
us. So we will be watching. Tune in next time on
I work with
Dark
live artists
Deed.
a lot, and they have
I'm hoping so.
advantages, but dead artists are also not bad. It's something cool about working with an artist who all of his work is complete. It's all just, you only have what you have. Is that instead of feeling a pressure to create new things, you actually have a sort of like, it suggests that you look backward. And so and a lot of, if you play through the game more, you'll see it goes very deep with this. I am a big believer that a game should just be enjoyable as a game. You go forward, you move forward, you don't have to know all the stuff. But I'm definitely I heard from a really smart designer 3 levels of WoW.
5% off.
So, the first level of WoW is, wow, that's cool. I like how this works, right? Like, oh, this game, oh, look, the frames you can hold up and you can, reveal stuff, right? Mm-hmm. The second level would be, oh, this is like an art history reference. Something's going on here where it's like, oh, there's like paintings or something. And the third level would be like, oh, this is actually, like, I'm inside of the tradition of art right now. And so like that's kind of like but that third thing isn't necessary to enjoy the game, or even really the second one. You can just go through the game and enjoy the whole thing. But there's also like, so what I mean by that and why I say that is because like the art, every detail of the game is taken from his illustrations for particular reasons, and certain particular illustrations are chosen. So that means that like for people who wanted to do a deep dive on this game, they'd be able to figure out a lot of the themes by looking at the art around you and a lot of what's going on, and maybe even figure out the actual plot by looking at the art around you. But that's cool for a nerd like me, but you could also just play the game and be like, spooky, cool, wow, and just enjoy it that way. But I liked being able to work with an artist, because then you're sort of essentially like you're making this love letter to this existing body of work, but in a different medium. It's fun to work in a different medium that Doré would never have even thought of. Right? He wasn't even alive when television was a thing, much less video games. So the low parts are, with solo development, if you're not doing something, nothing's happening. So it can be hard. I've had a couple of really talented people help me out here and there. I have a great illustrator, Jason, who the illustrations you pick up, he did those. He did a little bit of 3D modeling too. And I had another guy, Ty, who did some 3D modeling for me. But mostly this is solo. And so for that reason, I'm not much of a... So he did a lot of the character modeling. Not all of it, but mostly the creatures.
Which I like the creature. Actually. The creature, like running. Yeah. It's like a golem kind of creature that's rolling around. I wanted to ask, this is just because I'm a little stuck, but like, I don't know if you can see what I'm seeing, but like, how do I progress with... it says Dole.
Oh yeah, you gotta find an ember pool. Are you stuck there?
So so
you gotta look around with that frame.
Okay, and then that's what I was. Okay, I wasn't sure because it did say I had to find something or like use it. So I gotta find an ember.
So you can also press. You can also press H at any time. You get a hint.
H. Okay. It just says grab. Okay. Interesting.
All right, no, just press H. You can get a hint from. But if you look, you gotta look around with the frame, and you got to find an ember pool, which they are not. It's I'll tell you right now, it's actually near where you were with opening, but
Oh, from the opening.
yeah. So turn around and you would go back to
So closer to
you would
where
go-
where that light was, right?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Honestly, I generally enjoy stuff like this. Like I, even though I would get like at this point I would get lost. Like I would obviously eventually. I feel like with this game would take me the longest to finish, which is not a bad thing. It's just like, it's just how I am. I'm like the most simplest things. I might be one of those people like, oh, I can't get past this part just because I can't. Oh, I see it. I see it. I see it. I see it. Ah, I'm just bad. See,
So
see. I would have eventually got there, just
It's
not
an
today.
interesting thing of like it's hard for me to watch playtesters sometimes because I'm like, it's there, but I can't tell you. Yeah, I got to see how long it takes you to find it.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. You know, I would have eventually got there. It would have maybe
Yeah,
took
you
me
would,
another
yeah.
20 minutes. Probably
But it'd
maybe
be
10.
you'd be amazed. You watch the metrics and you see people just like bail after 15 minutes, and you're like,
Oh, I'm not one of those. No.
so now what you do, you throw those,
Oh,
and
okay.
it
I
lifts.
like
So
this.
they're like batteries.
The fact that I just like the fact that they're levitating and just
Yeah.
this.
So this is kind of oh, don't grab it. That's gonna kill you. Oh no, you're stuck.
Oh no, I got
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
So you
You're
you
good.
so
You're good.
yeah
You're
yeah
good.
there was a delay, but yeah, no, I got out.
Yeah.
I
You
hope.
got out. You got out.
Wait, so
Yeah, I'm
it would
watching it
actually
delay.
kill me?
Run, run. Yeah. It's gonna drop on you. Run. Yeah, they'll
Oh
drop on you.
jeez.
You narrowly escaped death there.
Oh, you know, because I'm one of the greatest. Like like it
Yes,
just
right.
happens. I wanted to ask, like, what is your vision that you want players to experience when this game is fully released? Like, what is the number one thing you want people to feel, and like what you want them to see when playing this?
That's a good question. I hope. Wow. Oh yeah, you're playing kind of an older version. That's what we're seeing here. Yeah, you
Ah,
got.
gotcha,
I
gotcha.
don't know where you got this version, but it's okay. It's close enough.
I got it from Steam.
Uh, Okay, gotcha. Yeah, this is an. Wait, you just got it?
No, I just down.
Oh, you
well,
got it back.
yeah,
Probably
yeah,
when we talked first.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's an update, but it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Oh, my apologies. So yeah, I had it in
That's
my
okay.
Steam library. It just didn't update it.
No, it's no big deal. Yeah, it's fine. The so yeah, the kind of like the experience I want people to have is I want people to maybe like gain a new empathy
Okay.
for or think about their own sort of life and choices through this, like this sort of like classic morality tale. I think that like in many ways, without giving too much away, in many ways the game does actually kind of have a little bit of a message. It's not beating you over the head with it, but it's there. And the game itself kind of like it does encourage you to think in different ways about what your choices mean in life. So there's some sort of dad energy going here.
I get that. I think
But,
it's just like
you
a
know-
new empathy, right? As you said.
Yeah, like kind of like self-examination is an important theme of the game, and I think that like overall, I just want the game to be interesting and spooky and weird, and I also don't really want to give anybody any answers. I think better art is much better at raising questions than giving answers. And so,
As I just asked you to tell
There's-
me how to get past that.
yeah, there you go. But like, no, I just mean like, I'm like telling people what to think. That's not what
Oh.
the game's in the business of doing.
I get
But in general, like, there's a kind of a cool thing that I've designed into the game, which is that there's essentially two completely valid possible reads on what's going on in the game, and I never confirm which one is happening.
Okay, interesting.
Like, depending on how you think about the world, you might think it's one thing, and then you might also think it's a whole other thing, and
it could be either or.
Could be either one. Yeah, or there's maybe even a third one. So it's all about that unreliable kind of narrator slash who knows what's going on kind of question, which I think leads you to draw your own conclusions.
Awesome. So I got two more questions because we are getting close to the end of Whispers.
Cool.
Say if I was a person who's inspired of being just a developer and just gaming and everything like that, like what is the best advice you can give somebody who wants to start becoming a developer?
Study things that aren't games.
Okay.
Yeah, like learn about things that are outside of gaming and games. I think that like some of the best creatives in any discipline, doesn't matter what they are educated and interested in things outside of the thing that they are actually practicing, the actual creative discipline that they're in. So, cultivate a diversity in interests. Otherwise, games in any industry, it can happen in film, definitely television. Too much self-reference is a problem. It's like there's no, if your innovation well will go very dry if all you're doing is referencing yourself and your own industry and other people in the industry, and you're just doing what they do, but slightly different. Mm-hmm. I just don't think it's I think that there's a place for that, and everything is iterative, but I think it's just about widening and understanding that we're all doing the same thing as creatives and designers and artists, but it's not just in video games. It's in storytelling as a whole, right? And so taking from other mediums and other places, like from history, from mythology, taking from those places and using those, I think is so much more powerful than just like learning more about video games. You probably already know plenty about video games.
Yeah.
You probably don't know shit about anything else, and that's a problem. And that's why it won't be interesting what you're doing. If and so you gotta be like, that's, I think, the way that it's, and also maybe you do know something really intimately because of your life experience about something. Put that in your art, put that in your, and then all the rest, the only other thing I'll say is the gatekeeping. Don't listen to the gatekeeping. People saying, oh, you have to go to school for blank or whatever. Not really, not all the time. Mm-hmm. People saying, oh, you need to do this program, use whatever program lets you make cool stuff. Like if you're using Game Maker, you can make amazing things in there. There's nothing that's limiting about, whatever your tools are. The best tool is the tool that you can make something interesting in. And just go cool and let that thing, beat it to death until you've done everything that tool could allow you to do, and then graduate. Don't focus on like, oh, I need a better thing, and that way I'll be legit enough to do this and that and that. You just gotta make stuff.
So start small, and then learn the program that you have. Basically, learn it till you can't learn anymore. Then brute force things, like do things in the wrong way, but do them with some awesome idea behind it. There's no patient on the table. Mm-hmm. We're not doctors here. Worst case scenario, you make a shitty video game. We've all done it. It's fine. It's okay. Unless you're making a doctor simulator, then you want to definitely make sure that you're not.
Yeah, maybe. If you're making a doctor simulator, yeah. But I just think like that. A lot of people get really hung up on like I'm a musician too. And if I was like looking at like when I'm playing guitar, the best guitarists, and the only time I could ever play is if I was playing like something that they played. I don't think I'd pick up the instrument, or if I had to match their speed or their grace, I don't think I'd pick it up. I think I just got to do what I can do, and slowly you grow. Yeah.
Nice, nice. I think that's great advice. And if anybody is listening to this, like, just definitely take it. Just like start off small, learn the program that you're working on, and own it. Like to the point where you could sleep, eat, and breathe it, basically.
Yeah.
And just go for it. Walter, thank you so much for this. Is there anything final you would like to say to our audience, listening, watching, or anything in that aspect?
So the demo will be up for a while for Dark and Deep. You can find it on Steam. We're going to be launching on some other platforms too. We do actually have Xbox in process too, which is pretty cool.
Nice,
I have
nice.
some help of some guys that are helping me port to Xbox and maybe others unannounced. And the full game's coming out in August. Uh, Indie game promotion is hard. It's just sort of like a total crapshoot.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I think my game is unique and cool and has some interesting things, you know, people that play it love it. It's awesome. The people have a great time, and I'm really proud of it. It's still really hard to get the word out. You can make a great game, and it's still so hard to get the word out. For every viral indie success you see, there's 100 really good games that might have been as good as that game that just never got their head above water. So if you believe in what the game is about, you think it's cool looking, please support.
Yeah, 100%. And this is on one of the reasons why I created Whispers, because I wanted to give devs a opportunity to present themselves to my audience, as well as just people getting to know devs on a more personal level. My biggest thing is when you go on Steam and you click on a game, you just see the name of the person. You don't see
Right.
anything. Like obviously you see what they created, but like this platform and this just podcast gives people opportunity to just put a name with a face, and then just get to know their personality to give it more of a connection from your what you're making. So like I'm hoping that the more developers that come on, that can be a platform for them to promote themselves, but also just this is all art you guys are creating. Like I give so much credit to how many hours and just dedication you guys put into this, and it should be highlighted. Like it's nothing to sneeze at. Like it's not easy to be a indie game developer, and the fact that you're taking every day and I just played one of your demos and it's not even updated yet. My version is not updated, but how amazing it was. Again, it just shows like how much passion you have in it. So again, kudos to you. Walter, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being a part of Whispers. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 20. I can't believe we're on episode 20. On Wednesday, we will be back with another guest at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And follow your boy on all platforms. Also, Wishlist, Dark and Deep. I put Walter's link tree in all the descriptions in all my platforms. So just go follow Walter and also show support